And welcome to everybody who is on this call and to those of you who might be watching it later when it's recorded. My name is Allison, and along with my husband, Gord, we are the owners of Skydive Vancouver Island. And it's always exciting to host our safety seminar series. Again, we were just talking, I can't believe it's been like 2020, so like 6 years of doing this. But yeah, this is, I'm excited about it. So welcome everyone to the Skydive Vancouver Island Safety Seminar for Rigging and Packing. We're glad you're here to take part in an open, practical discussion focused on building safer habits, strengthening our shared knowledge, and supporting each other as a community. This session is designed as an interactive question and answer style conversation. So your experiences, questions, and insights are not only welcome, they're essential to this meeting. We want this to feel like a collaborative roundtable, even though we're meeting virtually. To help keep things running smoothly, here are a few quick etiquette reminders. If I could speak, that would be great. Please stay muted unless you're invited to unmute. This helps reduce background noise and keeps the discussion clear for everyone. If you'd like to ask a question or add a comment, use the raise hand icon in the function Zoom. So for those of you, it's under the react, and you can just raise your hand just like that and then lower it when it's done. It does put it in an order for me so that I can get to everybody as needed. Also, feel free to use the chat option if you want to ask a question, comments. Again, let's keep it professional on there. And as always, let's keep this discussion respectful, constructive, and focused on learning and safety. We're looking forward to a great session with thoughtful dialogue, shared expertise, and plenty of opportunities to deepen our understanding of rigging and packing best practices. And I'm awesome. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly here. There we go. Yay, the official poster for it all. It is my pleasure and Gord's pleasure to have Jerod Cole presenting and kind of leading the meeting today. I will be the moderator. Jerod is the current CSPA Technical and Safety Chair. He has been on the board for CSPA for a couple of years and has moved into the role for this year for replacing Bill Petney. I don't know if Bill Petney could ever be replaced, but Jerod has taken on this task, commonly known as Jerod. All right. And so, Jerod, before I pass it over to you, obviously the big possible elephant in the room, if you want to call it, and lots of questions and concerns the last few days over social media has been the recent information coming out about Aerodyne and Icon. So we definitely we can certainly open that conversation. I just want to be clear and just present here quickly. I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully you guys are seeing this. So on behalf of Gord and I, we have talked to a lot of internal and external experts regarding the Aerodyne Icon containers and everything that's been happening right now. It is our decision not to ground the containers at this time. And our strong recommendation is for anyone who owns an Icon, an Aerodyne rig, to consult their rigger for any questions, concerns, inspection options, maintenance needs. And we do actually strongly encourage you to discuss with your rigger the applicability of the 2022 Aerodyne Technical Bulletin 250122 regarding the AAD cutter placement. Gord and I are continuing to monitor the information coming out, be it through Aerodyne, the CSPA, the PIA, the FAA. And so if you have any questions or concerns specific to Skydive Vancouver Island and our decisions that way, you can definitely reach out to Gord or I. And I guess on that note, Jerod, I'm going to pass the floor over to you and we'll get this all started.
Well, I think you guys are right on the mark with the majority of other involved parties, whether it be drop zones or associations. A lot of riggers are taking the same stance of there's not enough information out yet as to the details of uh, what's been going on with the equipment. So yeah, it's all up in the air right now, and everyone's just kind of sitting there waiting for some actual um, specifics and details, some actual facts on the matter of what's actually happened. So um, yeah, we can all hunker down and wait and just be aware and practice your EPs. Given the nature of what had happened, I think one of the biggest things to carry over, and this is going to come from everybody involved, whether it's peer jumpers to coaches, instructors, riggers, and DZOs. I think one of the things that uh, everyone can kind of focus on from this is when it comes to any type of emergency situation regarding your equipment and having to deploy a reserve, whether it be terminal or from a cutaway to a reserve deployment. Time is of the essence. Uh, the earlier and the faster and the higher you can get your reserve deployed drastically increases your chances of survivability. Delaying it, I mean, let's just say throw it on the table that you have a high hop and pop and you encounter malfunction at altitude, riding it down or thinking that I'll delay and I'll wait. It's the best interest you can exercise is deploy your reserve and get a functioning canopy above your head as soon as possible. I think that's your number one defense against any future problems past the current issue that you're having is deploy your reserve as soon as possible. That's all I can really say on the matter right now. So
I appreciate that. So I will open it up. Is there any questions from the floor specific to other than what Jerod and I just mentioned about the Aerodyne icon matters and where they stand right now?
I guess
Oh,
I would on this one, just because I know that the DZs got an email, and I know the CSPA riggers got an email. But if you want to share the CSPA stance with the broader audience, that might be worth doing.
yep, we're this similar stance where basically we're waiting for details to come in. CSPA's currently at this point not uh, grounding and is not um, endorsing the use of. We're neutral at this point until further details have come to light and we have more information that can actually give us a positive indicator on which way to sit on this very fine line right now. We're CSPA staying neutral and is along the lines of what, like I said, Vancouver's release, Skydive Vancouver, along the lines of PIA. A lot of the manufacturer, or a lot of the organizations have released as well. Of there's just not enough details right now to make a decision on to how to follow up with this. And like I said, until we get more facts, um, there's we can't comfortably say that we're going to take a side at this point. We're neutral.
Switzerland. And just to add to
Yes.
that, as a drops owner, again, every drop zone is welcome to make their own decision on the matter. So, there are some drop zones across Canada that have grounded them for now. There are some that are just like what Gordon and I are saying. Definitely speak to your rigger. If you're a skydiver who isn't a rigger or just have questions, I actually own an icon. lots of stuff I did not know about my own equipment. And so that's kind of the same stance. And CSPA is, basically saying drop zone owners have the right to make our own decisions as well. Great. All right. Well, if that is all to cover on the Aerodyne, so this is again a question and answer format. I do have some questions that we did get ahead of time. And so I'm going to kind of start off with those, but I definitely open up the floor. If there's, again, comments, questions you have, conversations you want to have, whether this is all about packing and rigging. So it's for both the audience. I think it's an important discussion to have with everybody because we own our equipment and we should know lots about our equipment. So I appreciate those of you who are also on this call who are non-riggers. That's what it's meant for. All right, Jerod, I have a question for you. What are the most common, and this might be a two-part because it's different issues, but what are the most common packing or rigging errors you've personally encountered, and what conditions do you kind of root cause allowed them to happen?
I would say, let's look at main packing, just general overall packing to start with. The biggest one that we see on that one is deviation from the manufacturer's instructions. Some pieces of equipment out there require specific steps and specific methods to be packed properly, where people kind of come up with their own creative ways of doing things. Sometimes, and for the most part, it generally works out, but occasionally it does the little devil rears its heads and causes problems. So I would say for main packers, following the packers and the manufacturer's instructions is the first and foremost best bet and best practice. And then rigging errors. Fortunately, I haven't seen many rigging errors of late. It's been a pretty good trend. I'm happy with it. I haven't bumped into many. Tools have always been a bit of a culprit in the rigging side of things. People most commonly is losing packing clamp tips. They're always fun to find. I'm just trying to think back of what other things we've typically found. Nothing serious and critical. The odd time you'll find like a pull-up that usually jumpers kind of thought that was a good place to stick it, and it worked its way down into the reserve somehow. But yeah, tool control is usually a good practice, and it usually leads to most errors. Partly outside of that, again, it kind of stems into, like I said, with the main packing stuff. Sometimes people get this idea in their head that they know better and they come up with a better way of doing something, or they think they've found a better way of doing something. And they may just not understand the big picture or the complete function of the piece of equipment and not really entertain the fact that they've actually created an error or a critical point that may develop into something bigger. So again, follow your packing instructions, follow the manufacturer's instructions. Don't just wing it and make stuff up on your own. If you have questions or ideas or things of that nature that you want to employ or start utilizing when you're packing reserves and stuff like that, reach out to the manufacturer. They may be open to it. They may have supplementary packing instructions that are along the lines that you're practicing. One that I can think of is I don't know, many people remember it, but the Ultico Dolphin container. It was pretty much a carbon copy of a Javelin, but to appease copyright stuff, they they packed the flaps differently, and the bottom flap didn't cover the semi-exposed pilot chute. But if you wrote to them, then they would supply you with the supplementary packing instructions to pack it similar, almost identical to a Javelin. But again, make sure you have that documentation in hand if you're going to vary out anything like that. And along that, lines, if you do start doing things differently and you do get, permission, and you call the manufacturer and they say, oh yeah, go ahead and do that, that's fine. Make sure you get documentation to back that up. Don't just go ahead and do it on your own, or just, take a handshake at the table for that. If anything comes up and there is an incident, you do need to be able to provide reasons why you deviated from the published packing instructions, and you'll need that documentation to stand behind if you're doing anything differently.
Awesome. Does anyone from the floor have anything to add to that, or their own kind of things that they've witnessed and seen, be it for packing or rigging? That's a quiet group. All right, well, I'm going to move into the next question then. Kind of based on that as well, like, what is your personal non-negotiable inspection step? So the one you would never skip, even under pressure. And I guess we could start on the packing side, and then kind of, I don't know if there's any steps you'd want to miss in rigging, but definitely the packing side of things.
I mean, in the perfect world, we're doing everything. I'll relax sometimes a little bit on canopy inspection, in the sense that I may not go as deep into, looking at every single stitch line on the canopy. If there's been no deployment, I was the last person to interact with that piece of equipment, and I could find absolutely zero evidence of anything happening or interacting. The container's clear, the free bag's clear. I'll relax a little bit when I'm doing my main or the reserve canopy inspection. It still gets done, but you can have a little bit of assurance that you're likely not going to find anything. I haven't come across anything from something in that nature before. Now, if you take a canopy that's had a ride on it, even if it was a low speed, you know, from a canopy, from a cutaway to a reserve deployment, I mean, it still needs to be inspected. There's an opening involved, and there's stresses on that system that, it was just an opening, but still, I mean, there's fabric and stitching and lines, and I mean, there's failures that can happen on that. But just from repack to repack, if the reserve was never used and there's no evidence of anything getting past the container of the free bag, then I'm comfortable being a little more relaxed in that detail, opposed to an after use. The harness in the container, definitely that needs to be fully inspected. Those are high use, people touch them, they're constantly used, like they're high wear traffic areas. They need to be, absolutely examined, top, bottom, inside and out, kind of thing.
Excellent. And just kind of going back, and Nikki posted in the chat here, the most common things that they've seen is stretched closing loops. And
Yeah.
you gave that a thumbs up. So,
Mm-hmm.
When you were just talking about, looking at our rigs and the containers, what are the most overlooked wear points on sport rigs, and why do these often get missed?
I find, The most wear I generally find on a container is typically around the main tray. Um, it's a high traffic area and high use area, right? It's every jump it's getting opened, every jump it's getting repacked, it's getting closed. Um, Typically, I since we shifted from one thing I have noticed over years, here's a good one. Um, Years ago, we shifted our bridle routing from out of the top of the main packing tray over the closing flaps, pin going into the loop and then tucked back in under the side flap and routed to the bridle. We shifted from that to double out the bottom, basically. There was a bulletin release from Vector UPT about this, and to adjust it to route your bridle out the bottom of the side flap up to the pin and then back under the side flap. I find since we started doing that, I'm finding us to see a lot more wear and tear along that binding tape just from the interaction from the bridle getting pulled out at high speeds when we deploy. Um, but yeah, most of the wear that I see is generally focused around the main tray. Um, Another popular area and people often really never really check this is emergency handles Velcro. Um, a lot of them are still Velcroed in, and it's one of those things that nobody ever really activates it outside of a repack. So it is one of those spots that does wear down that the Velcro starts kind of wearing out over time, and then it needs to be replaced. Keep those handles nice and secure.
Nice. Would anyone in the group like to add to that or have questions about that? Any sporties have questions? This is just such a nice group to you, Jerod. I love it. So I kind of want to move into a little bit of it. Oh, somebody has a hand up. Jennifer.
It was more of a commentary than anything, but I recently sold my rig to someone in Quebec because I got a new curve rig, and their rigger contacted me and said, "I can't believe you sold this without telling this girl that your pilot chute was in such bad shape." And I was like, "Whoa, I actually had no idea. That was not on purpose." And I'd actually had someone look at it kind of recently. And so it just taught me this really important lesson. Like, just because something was okay 4 months ago doesn't mean it's okay today. Just because something was okay, last season doesn't mean that it's going to be okay. So it just, as like a newer jumper, it kind of like jolted me a little bit. And I thought, right, I need to not rely on my rigger who's doing my repack, who's not inspecting my pilot chute to be catching things like this. We kind of assume that someone else would do it, but it's like it's totally our responsibility. But for newer jumpers, like people don't really, they say like, you got to know your gear, take care of your gear. But if no one teaches you what you're supposed to look for, like you might miss it. It was like inside the pilot chute, right? So like not something visible that I would see every time I packed it. So anyways, yeah.
Well, that's a great point, Jennifer. And it does also talk about the responsibilities as a sport jumper in your own container and making sure you know what it is your riggers are inspecting and what they don't inspect, because not all riggers are the same. Some people don't inspect the main, some do, so it's just always making sure that you know what your rigger is doing and then own your responsibility every time you're packing. And we'll kind of go into that, I think, a little bit later as well. I'll be showing you guys some good resources on the CSPA website for that. Yeah, no, that was an excellent point. Jerod, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke about the container, but basically, like the whole main component, everything from basically the risers up is subject to like higher levels of wear and tear. The harness system and the container systems are pretty robust. Um, but like she said, the pilot chutes, they do wear out. Risers do wear out. Bridles wear out. Another common point is around the grommet and the deployment bag. You see quite a bit of wear in there sometimes. Basically any component to deal with your main canopy is gonna wear out a lot faster than most of your most of your other equipment, just because of the forces on it during deployments and its constant use, vibration and flight, and just being used all the time.
Absolutely. And to further add to that, I think many of you know we've moved to the 270-day repack cycle on our reserves. And so, it's been a couple of years. As someone who audits the AIM reports that come in, there has been absolutely zero negative feedback or any incidences we've seen having extended that. And in fact, LTAD just had a roundtable discussion with drop zone owners. No drop zone owners have seen any issues. But one of the things that it does really, I think, stress is that rig owners, so the sport jumpers who own those rigs, making sure you're doing your due diligence, that if you see something off with your container or your rig or whatever, and maybe the riggers could talk a little bit more. Jerod, if you talk about this or anyone on this call, what would a sport jumper maybe see that would be like, oh, maybe I should, have my rigger look at this? Is there any kind of examples you guys could give on that? Jerod, how about we start with you, and anyone from the floor, put your hand up if you have some thoughts.
Yeah. Fuzzing and fraying is your usual first sign. The materials getting to look like the shag carpet your parents had in their basement, wear, obviously, discoloration is another indicator. A lot of materials, nylon generally when it's made it's white, and then colors are added to it to get our desired color. So of course, as things wear out, the color wears out. So when you start seeing fading as well, that's an indication that material is getting worn out. It could also be from sunlight damage, but fuzzing and obvious signs of damage are going to be your first clue as to wear and tear. Lines, I think everyone's kind of been well educated on lines over the last couple of years of our previous issues that came out. Line wear is an obvious thing, especially now with Vectran and HMA on the market, and its resilience to wear and tear, or showing signs of wear and tear. Now we've shifted into jump calculators and jump tracking for stuff like that. BOC pockets, bottom of container pockets, the elastics on the mouth of your BOC pouch wearing out. Especially if you're a head up flyer, that's something that you really need to pay attention to. You could end up in a premature deployment situation. Not to say that belly flyers aren't prone to that as well. It's just head up flyers. They're slightly more exposed. Rips, tears, fading material on your main canopy. I think everyone knows what has incurred or seen somebody or had one themselves, that baffed out canopy, as we call it. That the porosity is just worn right out, and as the porosity wears, material, the warp and the weft gets looser and looser, and eventually you come to a material failure. And there's a lot of things that can fail. Again, this is why we take our stuff to our riggers. We do have to be a little bit more diligent ourselves now with the 270-day pack cycle, because your riggers are seeing the equipment a little bit less. CSPA's dropped out a couple videos. Allison's going to talk about those later. But there's some instructional videos and stuff that you can do while you're packing to kind of help ward off some of these known issues that are out there. So
Awesome. And from the group, any of the riggers have anything to add to that as far as, what would give some sport jumpers things to look for? It's such a quiet group. All right. I did get a question actually from Gord, who's sitting over here. Any thoughts about the move away from the Keener rubber bands and the life cycle of the new rubber bands we use?
um
And maybe you might need to educate some of us who aren't as familiar about the whole issues with the rubber bands.
so for basically most of our jumping lives, we had this fantastic company. Oh God, their name is escaping me. What wasn't? Oh, I can't remember their name right now. They're
Keener.
fading. Keener, thank you. They they had a fantastic product, and just the way that they cured and treated their rubber just seemed to work, and the longevity was fantastic. Those elastics, I mean, would just go and go and go and go until they break. It used to be the ongoing thing of like, oh my God, it finally broke. Um, I have to finally change it. That's my favorite elastic. Now we're into Alliance, I believe, is a new company. Um, Keener shut down during COVID just because of the reductions and everything and the staffing and everything being shut down. And just like many other companies, they fell by the wayside. So Alliance stepped up and tried their best, did what they could, and their product just couldn't meet the same standards that Keener was at, just because of their curing process was different. So what we found was that they would the curing process never actually stopped. So they just kind of continued to cure, and eventually ended up into a weaker elastic and a weaker product. So they would completely fail. And then if you left them packed for too long, they'd start corroding and chemically interacting with nickel plated brass grommets and basically start melting and stick to your stuff, stick to your line, stick to your canopy, your D-bag. Um, there is a newer product from them. The rubber's curing process is a little bit different. I believe they're the mil spec rubber bands. I've seen the longevity of those is a little better. They're still prone. It's just not happening as quickly. Um, I haven't really left any on as an experiment to see how long it's taking. It's better, and I know it's not going to last. It's not as good, but yeah, I've seen a better success with the mil spec ones. So
Does anyone have questions or concerns or anything you want to add regarding the rubber bands? I definitely see a lot more broken rubber bands around my packing mats than I remember 12 years ago. Jennifer, go ahead.
Where do you recommend we get those ones that you're talking about in particular? Like the better ones?
I'm not sure where you guys are sourcing yours out on the West Coast. Paragear will carry them. I would assume Paraphernalia carries them as well. We go direct to the manufacturer over here just because we order in bulk. So, um, yeah, try Paraphernalia. Skydiving Gear Canada stocks them often. Yeah, most supply companies, parachute supply companies, are carrying them now.
And before I get to you, guest Dustin, we just have a question. How do we know if they are mil spec?
They're a little bit different. The color's a little bit different, and they feel a little bit different. The elasticities, uh, it's it's kind of if you had one beside the other, you could tell, but if you don't, it's kind of hard to tell. When we switched over to them, we were running the first batch or the first version that Alliance released, and we were running the mil specs, and we had to keep them separately labeled in different containers to be able to decide which ones were which. They're very, very similar. They're hard to tell because dimensionally they're the same size. It's just the curing process is a little bit different. So the rubber's slightly different, has a different color to it too, a little bit darker.
Interesting. Dustin.
Yeah, just one quick comment. Since we are getting into the season where people have had their stuff packed and sitting for several months, something that I've noticed is, like, I've heard about this issue for some time now, but I never actually realized how quickly these bands actually do gum up. I was doing a rigging job, and literally after only 6 or 8 weeks, like, we're finding that the bands are gumming up. So, you know, unpack your main and pack your main before you're gonna head out this season.
I appreciate that. And another question on that: are these the same rubber bands that are used? Is there? No, that's not. Never mind. That's just a dumb question on my part. We have a question from Jennifer again. How do you guys feel about those tubey reusable ones? Not sure what they're called. Few people swear by them around me. Tube stoves. Well, I'm just reading what it says. Dustin, you want to go ahead on that?
I have had personally 2 occasions with negative interactions with tube stoves. There's a lot of people that believe in them, but I can tell you for certain that I have landed once, and the tube, the line bite from the tube stove, it slipped out of the tube stove, but the tube stove rolled up so hard that it basically became knotted and held the grommet shut of my D-bag. So I've had that once for sure, and I'm fairly sure a second time, but I can't confirm because that parachute ended up in a full bag lock. I never got to see the end result of it. So my personal experience with them is I would not jump with them again.
Jerod, do you want to add to that?
They were kind of, they became popular, and their big sales pitch back in the day was that they reduced the friction on the lines. And back then, when we were using predominantly the high performance line at the time was Spectra, and Spectra's so a little line history here. We went from Dacron, from Paracord down to Dacron, which had great elasticity, down to Spectra, which was tiny little stuff. And as we got smaller parachutes and wanted to go faster and less drag and look cooler, we went to Spectra. Spectra's byproduct was the more you used it, the more it shrunk. And the shrinking was from heat. So when you heat Spectra, it shrinks. So they came up, and their big sales pitch on tube stoves was because they were rounded, there was less friction when it got extracted off of the stove, therefore reducing line wear on your Spectra, and therefore you didn't have to reline your canopy as much. Back in the day, Spectra didn't need relining nearly as much as Spectra and an HMA does. The downside of those tube stoves was because they were such a good, strong product, they also didn't break as easy. And that's where, like, Dustin's ran into, and it was kind of common to see bag locks were kind of related to tube stoves because they wouldn't let go. Where the reason we use rubber bands is they're a weak point in the system, and they're a forced failure. So if in the event of a lockup on a stove, that the rubber band should stretch to failure, where the tube stoves didn't stretch to failure, or they had a much larger margin of which they would fail in. So some people swear by them to this day. I used them for a bit. The problem I found with them is the drop zone I jump at, the drop zone supplies its rubber bands, and just kind of there's a big pot of them and everyone just digs in. So I ended up in a situation where I had tube stows on parts of my stows and the packers that would just put rubber bands on. So I was running a mix and I really didn't like doing that. I wasn't advised either at the time. So I just completely stopped using tube stoves. They were expensive as well, if I remember. It's been many years since I've used them. I don't see them much anymore. They're not that popular. At least over here, they're not. So
Good to know. Great question. Kind of in the line of those questions, great question from Mike here. Is it better to keep your main packed or just unpacked in a bin over the non-jumping season? And does it matter either way?
the best practice now with the current elastics would be to open your main. So what we do at the end of our season with the school's equipment and most of the equipment that I deal with that gets left here, we open it up and we take the elastics off. We'll cut them off the D bags so that we don't have the melting and bonding issue. Um, I would suggest opening your main if you're not jumping for the winter, removing the elastics and close your main back up. The safest place your parachute's gonna be is in the container, especially if you have pets or anything like that. That cats that want to try and sleep in your main and claw away at it and get into wherever you store it. It's safer in there. There are some people that jumping high performance canopies with specific materials in them. It's not advised for them to leave their mains packed for long periods of time. Those people, who they are, they know who they are, and they're usually exercising this already. So, but for the average jumper, your parachute's probably safest inside of its container, packed up in its D bag. Yeah.
Excellent. Good question. Any other questions or comments right now? You did. So Jerod, I want to kind of jump into this next question. For those of you who are not aware, I do have been for the last few years here. I analyze all the AIM reports that we receive throughout Canada, and I work closely with other organizations, USPA, APF, all around for our data that we get. And one of the big trends we have seen over the past 3-4 years, not that this is a new thing, but it's something that's trending, is hard openings, and specifically hard openings that are resulting in very serious injuries. And to be kind of clear on this, this isn't specific to canopy size, container, experience. It's tandems, it's students, it's more experienced jumpers. So first off, if you know of yourself having had a hard opening, or anyone else having hard openings, it is important to note that the PIA is also now tracking this. And so we're working with the Technical and Safety Committee there, TK, and actually supplying the data. So even if it's a hard opening that is just kind of taking your breath away, you land safely and fine, we are strongly encouraging you to fill out an AIM report, simply so that we can start getting more and more data on these openings. I know a lot of people don't report the hard opening stuff unless there is serious injury. So that being one thing. But one of the things that we saw is that there has been, root causes down to some packing errors. And so I wanted to talk about a couple things on that. Some of the environmental factors or human factors that most often lead to packing mistakes, and specifically what kind of errors or steps are people possibly taking that result in hard openings. Would you be able to chat a bit about that?
Yeah, hard openings. I've had my fair share. I think the worst one I ever had, I was at a commission for a week. The person forgot to set the brakes on a canopy that I jumped, and I found out that that's pretty important that they set the brakes. Yeah, main points of packing to kind of stay safer from hard openings would be slider and nose treatment, I would say. Your slider plays a pretty big role in the deployment of your parachute. So, uh, taking a, 100 plus, 150 plus square foot piece of material and throwing it into the wind at 120 miles an hour. I mean, for the most part, it's uneventful for us. But I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, the deceleration it's a phenomenal amount of energy that your parachute system absorbs. Um, and the slider takes the first brunt of it really after you've got bag strip. Your canopy comes out of the S fold and your slider starts working. Um, your slider is a reefing device that basically holds pressure from the relative wind, basically as you're still decelerating, and holds your canopy closed, so to say, until you slow down enough where there's a transition of speed and energy where your slider starts being less effective and your canopy is allowed to open up. If you negate treating your slider while you're packing, if you're one of those people that just kind of shove it down and just kind of forget about it, I would think eventually you're going to find yourself in a situation of a hard opening. Hopefully not a bad one. Some little tricks on that would be quartering your slider nicely, making sure that your slider's rested up against the slider stops on your canopy. Most modern canopies have them on the stabilizers. And then another big thing, making sure that your slider is not in a collapsed configuration when you pack. That is gonna guarantee your hard opening. Slider size can be related to hard openings, but then you're getting into a discussion with a manufacturer. If you've got a canopy that's consistently giving you hard openings, the old run to and known canopy for many years used to be the Sabre 1, was now heavy with known hard openings, but they came up with a bunch of aftermarket slider modifications. I don't think we see many Sabre 1s anymore. Most of them are phased out. The Sabre 2 kind of took over, and I think everyone's kind of stopped jumping Sabre 1s. I should hope. I saw it up there, collapse configuration. So the drawstrings on your slider, after you open, you pull the drawstrings and it reduces the size of the slider. It crinkles it up, and then you can tuck it in behind your head. If you have type 17 risers, you can pull it down behind your head, or it just kind of stops it from flapping. That's what we're talking about there. Yeah. So the slider treatment's going to be a big thing. Check in with your packing instructions and see what the manufacturer wants you to do with it there. They'll be specific about it. It's an important part of packing. So there will be like something in the packing instructions that addresses how they want you to treat the slider on those canopies. Nose treatment's another one. There's probably 101 ways to deal with the nose on a canopy. Again, defer back to the manufacturer. Go dig up the manual. All parachutes have a manual. It's required. But in there you'll find what they want you to do with the nose. But there's been different ways of dealing with it, whether you roll the nose or you kind of treat it in a little bit in or leave it a little bit out. Again, check with the manual. All parachutes are going to be different. Line stows are another one that kind of falls down maybe third. down the list, making sure that your line stows are clear, that there's like proper tension when you're packing, that your line stows are all nice and neat, that they're not overly, birds nesting. And ideally for sport canopies, we want to be about 1.5 inches on our line stows, being the amount that goes through the stow elastics. If you're using a deployment bag that has a full complement of line stows on them, a lot of more common deployment bags now that we're seeing are semi-stowless, where you'll have a pocket on the side of the bag where you'll route the lines back and forth, again, as per manufacturer. And then often it's, 2 to 3 to 4 actual like bites through an elastic band or stows through an elastic band. Just try and be as neat as you can through there, and that'll kind of help you navigate some hard opening, hopefully. Hard openings are a tricky one. There's a lot of inquiry being put into them these days. Like Allison said, via PIA, manufacturers are starting to look more and more at them, just because technology is advancing, and we're getting to that point where it's of the parachute design and function is reliable enough now that we can start focusing on these issues and nipping little things, not little, but little things like hard openings, and dealing with that. There's so many things that could be causing them, but yeah, it's a tricky one.
Oh yes, it is. Don't forget
Yeah.
body position and everything in the skydiving side of things. But I do appreciate, and pardon me, there is actually a big article coming out from the CSPA Technical and Safety Committee specific to the hard openings. But I thought it was important to recognize on here and also identify, if you're seeing them around your drop zone or you're hearing of them, to certainly get people to fill out those AIM reports. This is a very big research effort by many people. Any questions? Forward? Nope. So I just kind of want to move into a different area. A lot of riggers are often, as a drop zone owner, we're often sending skydivers who are looking at new rigs or wanting to buy rigs. We often send them to riggers. We're like, oh, go talk to your rigger, go talk to Aiden, go talk to Dustin, whoever, whatever rigger. So what criteria do you use when advising a jumper about gear selection or compatibility? Especially for that new novice jumper, but experienced guys too. They sometimes ask the wrong guys, but yeah.
I mean, you nailed it already. It's compatibility is the big thing. The compatibility of parts and the compatibility of those parts to the jumper. Not every jumper is at the same skill level. I mean, we all know this, right? Some people are better at flying parachutes than others. Some people can process information better than others, and they may be, it's not uncommon to see a novice rush through downsizing because they bought a container that wasn't suitable for them, and now they're trying to get on something that's way too fast for them, and they can't compute and function with it too quickly. So there's a compatibility with a person, and there's a compatibility with components to themselves. It's not uncommon for us to see people, either buy a system that was previously set up this way, or to be piecing together something, and they bought a container that says it should take this, but they could only find one of these, and so they decided to take a parachute that's way too big for the container and try and stuff it in there. Normally what happens is you just see that person just sweating like crazy, holding a sore hand as their pull-ups, like making their fingers go white trying to close their container. What they don't understand is that there's possibilities of things not interacting properly and leading to deployment issues, to hesitations, to problems, to things not fitting, to system failures, to inevitably reserve rides. And then again, going back to compatibility with the human, I mean, eventually these things usually transpire into an injury, all of which end up in an AIM report. And then, that's usually where we find out that, oh dear, something's gone horribly wrong. The big thing's going to be is, I mean, again, referencing manuals, because we're riggers, manuals are a big thing for us. Pull up the specs, look for the pack volume specs, look for PIA did a study years ago, but it hasn't really been updated. A lot of the manufacturers have a pack volume spec, and whether it be the manufacturer of the canopy or the container, but there's a compatibility chart for most any parachute system container-wise out there, and make sure that the parts that are in the container are the adequate size and adequate appropriately for the container and for the jumper. Yeah, I mean, we could go on all day about different scenarios, and how to deal with these, but ultimately check the manuals. And then if you're a rigger and you're not really involved in that person's development, not all riggers jump or are active as much as, say, a coach or an instructor. So, but you probably know the coach or instructor. Don't be afraid to reach out to coaches, instructors, DZOs, senior jumpers on their drop zone, and inquire, hey, is this person ready for this, or is this an appropriate size for this person, if you're wondering, and if you don't know. Everybody that I've kind of incurred in skydiving up to this point is generally looking out for one another, and if you ask, they'll give you an honest answer. They'll say, yeah, pack it up, let them have it, or maybe we should find something different for them. Yeah, it's a thing. It exists.
Yeah. Never mind all the scam stuff that happens as well. We definitely recommend to everybody, no matter what you do, like, contact that DZ, contact whoever you can to confirm that this is a real thing. Gordon and I get phone calls all the time confirming, hey, is this person a jumper? Those kind of things as well. Dustin, I know you also sell rigs and stuff like that. Is there anything you want to add to that conversation about your recommendation if riggers are giving advice and have people approaching them?
A good starting point would be the downsizing criterion. We have it published in our sport canopy endorsement, but it's also important to keep in mind that that's very situational, and it doesn't account for necessarily someone having 300 jumps over 30 years in the sport type of thing. But yeah, it's very situational. But my general advice is somebody should be able to land their current parachute in all wind conditions they could possibly encounter, consistently, standing, and accurately before they consider downsizing.
That definitely, especially for downsizing. Awesome. I'm not sure if anyone has anything to add to that. No, I always feel like it's a big pressure for riggers. There's also that due diligence, right? You might have 5 rigs you're trying to sell for other people, and you're like, yeah, there's definitely a due diligence to make sure that we're making sure it's compatible for the person we're selling it to. So thank you to the riggers who do put in all that work. Kind of a question that goes back from another question, but how do you evaluate whether an incident, like a malfunction, was caused by the equipment, human error, or a combination of both? So something's happened. We often go to our riggers and be like, why did this happen? What kind of steps do you take, Jerod? Like, obviously it's very situational, but.
This is a fun one. Yeah, Aerodyne. No. Yeah, this is oi, oi, oi. There's sometimes there's just telltales and obvious answers, you know. This happened, it was a packing error, it was a deployment error, you know, Johnny Jumper decided he was gonna pitch main back loop or like mid back loop, and well, we know how that ends, right? But yeah, there's times where uh, something happens. Usually the first thing you can do is, I mean, provided the person is still talking, hopefully, let's take it on a lighter incident, you know, maybe a hard opening or something like that. Let's talk about that. You can ask the jumper basically what happened. You can inquire. The first set is, establish as many facts as you can. Talk to jumpers, talk to people who are on site, talk to the individual involved, people who may have witnessed it. See what kind of information you can gather from that. Often I find with experience, you'll learn to develop and build a good storyline, and it'll kind of start directing you to where to go if you need to go and deal with anything with the equipment. For new riggers, first time if you're the first time dealing with an incident or something like that where a jumper involved in some kind of equipment malfunction of whatever nature, maybe don't be afraid to reach out to a senior rigger or a mentor or something like that, and kind of get a rundown on what kind of questions you should be asking and things that you maybe should be looking for or looking at. um, Very rarely in our sport do we come across things that have never ever happened before. A lot of times it's recurring incidents. Um, but yeah, gather the facts and then you can move over with the information that you have and you can look at the equipment. The lovely thing about equipment doesn't really lie to you. It just tells a simple story of what happened. How much of the story it wants to actually release can be tricky. But if you look hard enough, there's a good chance that you'll find something. Um, yeah, some of them, like I said, Aerodyne. Some of them are going to be harder than others, right? Sometimes you're not going to get the story, you're not going to get the full story, you're not going to get any details whatsoever. I mean, you just got to basically go at that point and look at the equipment and just kind of interpret what it's telling you. Look at everything and look unbiased and don't pass judgment until you've seen everything. And even then, sit back, stop, think about it. Um, I've dealt with accidents and incidents with people and equipment. And oftentimes I'll generate an opinion on one front and then I'll sit on it for a day and come back at it and look at it again and I'll develop a second opinion on things. Um, I'm not opposed to calling up people and discussing things and asking questions. Again, contact manufacturers. Uh, there's a good chance that they've already dealt with it. Like I said, it's not very often that we come across something that has never ever happened before. So sometimes the manufacturers can direct you exactly where to look or telltales and things to look for. Yeah.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that for sure. Um, Still doing good from the floor. Look at our time. I'm like, it's already 6:08. This is great. I'm gonna need like 10 minutes on my own at the end, but so I do know that we have a lot of riggers on this call, and so this one is actually a little bit more specific for the rigger side of the world of things, but at the same time, I think just everybody can learn from maybe this. How do you handle disagreements with other riggers about airworthiness or repair decisions? I have learned that there's riggers have different opinions about things. You all run your own businesses. So how do you deal with, like, what would be your recommendation in dealing with those?
just keep in mind, there's, as they say, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Um, I don't know if you guys say that in BC. We say that over here, anyways. Uh, um, this kind of goes into, the pick up the phone conversation. You know, give them a call, ask them. Um, just because you're an old time rigger doesn't mean you know everything, right? Just because you're a new rigger doesn't mean you know everything. Um, yeah, pick up the phone, ask a question. Um, if that's not working, call someone else, ask a question. If you're having disputes and things are not going well, there is a system on CSPA's website. I believe you're going to get into that later. Yeah. Uh, there are methods you can reach out to me. You can reach out to the system that Allison's going to talk about. Take it further up the chain. Ultimately, there's I want to say there's a way to do things and a way not to do things, but just because you think your way is the best way doesn't mean that their way wasn't the best way at the time. Um, some riggers may not have the abilities that you have. They may not have the equipment that you have. I'm fortunate. I have a full service loft at my beck and call. I get equipment in and I see repairs and things that have been done to equipment that I could easily shake my head at and scoff at and go, oh my God, what were they thinking? Why would they ever do this? But, keep in mind that that person had the best intentions that they could at heart, and they did what they could with what was available to them. Um, you know, uh, some of the things you could just simply, redo or bring up to speed or make up the spec. Um, you know, have a compassionate heart. Maybe, you know, I think one of the big things though is don't don't treat it aggressively. Treat it with an open mind and the attitude that we're all still learning. Like I said, old time riggers, they don't know everything. New time riggers, they don't know everything. You know, just have that open attitude and just keep learning. You know, when you make a mistake, learn from it. When they make a mistake, learn from it. That's all you can do. Yeah.
Great answer on that for sure. Anyone got like a question or anything before I move on to some of the other questions? Jennifer, go ahead. Oh, hold on, Dustin. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm not sure if this is totally related, but it had me wondering, with the talks on the Aerodyne thing, and we were chatting about it in our board chat, and one of our president is a rigger as well, and she was saying, yeah, well, it's on the responsibility of the rigger to like check the bulletins and stuff for, when they're packing. And I thought, I wondered, do riggers expect sport jumpers to also keep track of those sorts of things? Because it made me realize, wow, I would have never known had I owned an Icon that bulletin from 2022 would come out recommending certain placement, blah, 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 all that. So do you guys as riggers expect us to keep track? Is that something that would insult you if we're like, hey, did you check the new like thing that came out? Like, would that be inappropriate from a jumper? I don't know. I'm just wondering about that.
It's a great question, Jennifer. Jerod, I'll let you answer that one.
I personally don't really expect jumpers to know that stuff. I kind of dump that responsibility on the rigger. I mean, it's great if they do know. With social media anymore, it's not uncommon when the average jumper knows about things going on. But some people, they just want to put their parachute on and go for a skydive and not think about it and let somebody else worry about it, right? I mean, it's the way they are. That's kind of where the riggers kind of come up, that they'll catch these things. Um, sometimes some of them can be hard to find. Like, man, like if you didn't understand where to look for them, like, yeah, you'd never find some of these service bulletins or ADs that are out there. There's resources that are there. Manufacturers generally have them posted on their websites. Some are harder to find than others. A great resource, if you're ever wondering, is Parachute Industry Association has a really general list of across all the manufacturers of service bulletins that have been released. CSPA used to have a really comprehensive list. I believe we stopped keeping up ours. But other skydiving federations have theirs, as our associations have generated lists as well. But they are out there. But yeah, generally from my personal experience, a lot of average jumpers don't really know about them or know the details of them. They may know of it, but they don't really know what it's talking about. Yeah.
Great question, Jennifer. Dustin, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment about the whole disagreeing with the rigger thing. I'm a fairly new rigger, so I tend to defer to the information of the people who are senior to me. But when in doubt, the manufacturer is the ones to ask. Like I believe it or not, I got an email back from Aerodyne within a day for a question I had last week. Probably not this week, but they were very quick getting back to me about the grade of magnets that are inside of their semi-solus D bags. So, you know, we could, of course, airworthiness is a subjective opinion, but when in doubt, most of the manufacturers that I've asked things to have gotten back like very, very quickly. So, yeah. And as far as the Jennifer's kind of point there, I don't expect the skydivers to know, but really they should know what their equipment is. Like there's some due diligence on both parts, but like I wouldn't expect the average skydiver to have a clue about many things in skydiving. But yeah, it's certainly something. I sent a screenshot of all the serial numbers and stuff and everything I wrote down to the people that I packed the rig for, so at least they have that information recorded somewhere.
Gorgeous has a comment as well. Sorry, we're sharing screen.
Hello. So skydivers should know their gear, and they should be responsible for it as well. So a parachute is an airplane. It's an aircraft. And so I have a couple of airplanes, and if I just go to my mechanic and just go, hey, just do all the work that needs to be done, you know, the information isn't complete, and I can't rely on him to make a decision on what work has to be done on my aircraft. So that's why Transport Canada assigns a person responsible for maintenance, which is me, and for our aircraft. And so I have to give the instructions to the mechanic about the work that he's going to do on the aircraft. And so that means it's my responsibility to look through airworthiness directives and service bulletins and everything that pertains to my aircraft. Now, a plane is much more complicated than a parachute is. And as Jerod said, most of the information is pretty readily available on the manufacturer's website for both your rig and your parachute. So you should, as a skydiver, be checking these bulletins. Just check them once a year, even. You know, annually, make it part of your off-season procedure, or maybe just before the season starts. Look your stuff up online and see if there's anything there. Because to rely on your rigger to make sure that that information is that your rig is maintained to that level is not fair to them. So you should be able to approach your rigger and say, hey, I'm due for a repack. I've noticed this service bulletin. Let's discuss it and decide as well this is a good decision for me to do the work on this. Yeah, I think we need to be better. Thank you.
And on a personal note too, you know, this Aerodyne thing that's happening really made that stand out for myself. As much as I sit on the technical and safety committee and all this stuff, I am not somebody who pays attention to. I own an Aerodyne. I did not know that it was an icon because I'm like, oh, that's just a brand of Aerodyne. I thought they had other types of brands. So, because although my icon says it very small, so that's just silly things learned from me. But I do agree. Like reading, the technical recommendation from 2022. I read it. I had to ask, I'm asking my rigger, can you tell me? I don't know where my AAD placement is currently. Like, I don't know this stuff because I've never. Why would I? And then based on that, having the discussion of whether to change it or not. And I did actually have Derek is a rigger on here that him and I chatted as well about this. And I said, what would you do? Like, essentially, it is the rig owner's decision. Yes, riggers can recommend things, but at the end of the day, it is your rig. So you should know it as best you can. I'm learning. Jerod, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh,
Yeah. So it's a lot, they're little pieces of equipment. So the time is 6:20. I do have one question before I go. I'm gonna need about like 10 minutes for some walkthrough. But the one big question that I just think is so good, because we have a lot of people who aren't riggers here. They have their own rigs. But we have a lot of great riggers on here. What's the most important things jumpers misunderstand about their own equipment?
a lot. I think the big thing is overall how it works. I think generally, yeah, just a general overall function of the parachute from the moment you grab your whatever deployment handle style you have to the moment that you land, how everything works. Uh, I mean, even after landing, how to pack it and how to put it back in, why we do certain things, why there's little this, that, and the other thing during packing, why certain components are compatible with others, um, why service bulletins exist, why pilot chutes wear out, why lines wear out, why material wears out, what does your slider actually do, what are slider stops, you know, generally an overall understanding of their equipment. Um, kind of doubling down on what Gord said, like it is your parachute. You should know how it works and how to maintain it and what it's supposed to do. It's just going to make you a better skydiver. Um, having a general overall knowledge is going to help you fly your parachute, maintain your parachute, and let your parachute take care of you better. Um, I've met numerous people over the years who've taken a rigger course just to understand their parachute, understand how it works. A lot of people have never ever seen a reserve, believe it or not. They have no idea what color it is. They don't know that it's a 7 cell, that it's made of a different material than their main. They, don't even realize what a free bag is, that it comes off, that they might lose it. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand just overall how their equipment works and how it works within itself and with the other components. Yeah. Yeah. Hang out with your rigger, sit down. Some riggers are okay with it if you want to go and hang out in their loft while they're packing your reserve. You know, go sit with them, ask some questions, chat with them, um, fireside chats, right? So
Awesome. Thanks, Red. Anyone else want to add to that? Any other riggers want to add to that, or any questions anyone has? So I recognize it's 6:24. I do want, if there are some resources that I wanted to show you guys. Before I do that, Jerod, is there anything else that you wanted to, that we didn't maybe touch base on, that you wanted to touch base on before I go into that resource side of things?
No, I think we've had a great chat tonight.
Yeah, it's I thank you guys. So I'm just gonna really quick, we'll go back to Jerod, but I'm gonna really quickly share my screen. So I do understand that the CSPA page, hold on, I gotta hopefully, there it is. Can you guys all see the CSPA? Jerod, you're the only one I can actually see, so if you give me the thumbs up.
Yeah, we
All
can
right,
see it.
perfect. So I know our website's not pretty, but it's very resourceful and it's actually quite user friendly. So I just wanted to show you guys all, whether you're a rigger, whether you're a packer, or whether you're a skydiver who's just packing their own rigs, or all the above. There's just a few things that I want to make you guys aware of. Anyone who's interested in taking a rigger course, there's we have it right on our front page here, the next one coming up. We also have a tab about events, and in this events, there's tons of skydiving events. It is kind of an odd calendar, but it does work. So it talks about all the coach courses. There's skills camps. There's PFFI courses. The rigging courses will also be in here. So strongly recommend you head off that way too if you're interested in some courses. Not all of them are listed because, of course, we're dependent on organizers and drop zone owners actually submitting the information. But where I really wanted to take you guys to is, I'm going to go to the safety tab and to our safety and educational resources. Jerod was talking earlier about CSPA has created some great videos specific to our equipment for pre-boarding, gear checks, and just your own inspection on your, especially with the 270 reserve cycle now. So we have this safety and educational resource site. You can see here, there's a place for everyone. We have some excellent articles here on ethical accountability. I have an article about breaking the silence around sexual harassment and assault in skydiving. A whole bunch of resources for skydivers. Different articles. These are some of the briefing guides for if you're wanting to go into canopy formation, if you want to go into movement. And then there's an actual, I'm just going to see if this pulls up. So here's like the checklist. Jerod, did the checklist come up? Can you see the?
Yep.
Perfect. So this is a great checklist you can like print off. So just so you guys know, you can have that there. I'm not going to go into great detail about all this, but I just want you guys to know where to find the information. At the top here, you can see the videos. So these actually link us to the YouTube. They are awesome, short little videos. I actually don't know if it will share it. Did it share it?
Yep.
It's probably going to give a commercial. So, but yeah, there.
How to articulate thoughts into words more clearly. All it takes.
Inspect while you pack.
You can see that. I'm not going to put this whole thing on. But yeah.
Do you remember the acronym PINT from PIM2A?
So it goes through that. There's one for pre-boarding checks. Watch these videos. They are also in French, so you can go over to the French up in here and convert them if you would rather watch them in French. So there's those. For riggers, this we are building on. There is the resource list here, but the videos are also here. And the Technical and Safety Committee is working on building this up. This is pretty much new since kind of last year. And then, of course, coaches and instructors, this one's also being built up, but there's a lot of stuff there. So utilize this site. It's great. It's got lots of information. The other thing that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention, so we changed the AIM reports last year. And so for those of you who can see, we actually have AIM reports now based on, you know, who it's for. So if a tandem, there's a tandem malfunction or an incident, you just fill out the tandem one student experience. But one of the ones that was added now is it's called for equipment. And this we're really, you know, whether you pack your own or riggers, you guys are seeing lots of this. This is just about reporting stuff that you know, maybe you just see that there's line wear on a canopy, or there's, I don't know. I don't, we're not very good with the different examples on this, but anything equipment related. So it didn't necessarily wasn't up in the sky, but you noticed it down on the ground. And this is just really specific to like, hey, sometimes you don't have to talk to the rigger about it, you know, but we're wanting this. This is nothing to do with disciplinary action. This is all about tracking. So it's just tracking information. A great example of utilizing something like this, or actually we were having tension knots, so they would be on the other jumpers, but with gyro canopies a few years ago, gyro ended up doing a whole recall and they changed lines and all that kind of stuff. And it comes from this kind of data. So I do think that this report is really good. So this is, again, even as a skydiver, if you see something that just isn't right about the equipment and needs to be changed, this is a great one to fill out. Again, none of it's punitive in any way. The other thing I wanted to just bring, oh, and then, sorry, and then there is the, so this is the occurrence and risk mitigation reporting. So when we are talking about the rigging, this is the reporting for riggers. So you can click on, I don't know if it's going to let me go to this link or not. Oh, there you go. So this is part of the rigging system. So rigging irregularities that you might have found to CSPA. So this is the rigger to rigger type of stuff that you might want to fill out. And it's not punitive either. Like it's just all about good ethics. If you found something in rigging that was, you know, incorrect or anything, it's just reporting it here. And then this is the big one. So these are all of our AIM reports. And I'm just going to pull up the summary analysis is the big one. It evaluates the whole year. You're going to see a condensed version going into Campera. But if you are a stat nerd and you love the data, this is like the full report. And it goes into, and at the end, there's recommendations for riggers and packers and stuff. So take the time, read that. It's a full report. But our actual individual AIM reports, we do our best. The goal is to actually publish them every month. Sometimes they're late, just depends on different things like translations. But you can see here all the different categories that we have. So if we wanted to go to, say, malfunctions under experienced jumpers. So here's every report. Like here's all the different, you know, sections. They're all numbered off. It shows you what kind of discipline they were doing, number of skydives, the container, the main. And then it has the details, the facts kind of as given from the drop zone or whoever submitted it. And then the CSPA recommendations. These are high-level recommendations because obviously, you know, we're going to refer back to the PIMs. So we just kind of high levels. But you can see here that this is really noticed that, you know, who should be reading this. Packers, riggers are on there. So whether you're a sport jumper, whether you're a rigger or packer, it's great to like keep aware of what's going on. You know, we used to only report at the end of the year what had happened the previous year. You know, it's kind of nice staying more on top of things and also to help weed out drama and rumors and speculation. You know, last year there was a fatality in Canada. That fatality is here, so it just sums it up. And as you can see, there's a lot of recommendations. So those are just things that you guys should be looking at as best you can on a regular basis, kind of make it your best practice. So yeah, all the 2005 data is in there. I think we have like 3 AIM reports right now for this season. So usually we'll start seeing stuff in May. And I think that's it. Is there anything, if you want to learn more about being a rigger, go into your ratings, become a rigger. There you go. or you can contact Jerod directly as well. Jerod, I don't think I missed anything in here. I'm going to go back to my, whoops, now I can't, did I stop sharing it? There we go. Can you guys see me now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Oh, hello.
Sorry,
hello.
I didn't have my hand. Hi.
You're okay.
Hi.
And then I'll go to Dustin. Go ahead, V.
Okay. I actually have two different questions. I guess one for packing and then one for rigging as well. So my packing question is, I noticed just being at SVI this summer, there's been like packing courses and things like that going on, but a lot of them are either being taught by like people who are coaches and riggers, obviously, that kind of thing. I don't fall under like a CSPA rigger, like I'm under the FAA. I'm also not a coach or anything like that. But I just wanted to ask, is it still okay if like I think it's okay, but I just wanted to make sure. If somebody is either, you know, practicing and they need to get signed off, or let's say they're like, oh, I missed the packing course, like, would you be able to teach me? Like, is that still like, can I still do that technically, or do we need to follow like certain like rules or regulations under CSPA?
Jerod or Dustin, actually, either one of you guys can answer that.
Dustin is main packing. You want it?
I mean, technically, the correct answer right now is as a without having any CSPA ratings, you cannot sign off or endorse somebody to do their main packing endorsement. I mean, that's something that is worth considering on the CSPA level. But I guess it hasn't really been an issue right now. It hasn't really been a major issue, but I would agree it might be worth discussing. Most people would utilize some form of discretion and realizing that typically an FAA rigger ought to know more than a 50 jump coach and be happy
I
with.
just didn't know because of the rating thing, like if that was, that's all. It was more like the rating stuff.
Gord just wants to step in on that.
Yeah, so as an FAA rigger, you're more than qualified to be able to teach somebody how to pack. Now, as whether or not you can sign off the CSPA
it's more
document
signing off stuff
that says it's certified or what have you to send that in, I guess we need to have a coach 2 or a coach 1 or whatever to sign that off. But yeah, I don't have a problem with an FAA rigger teaching packing. So I think I less of an issue with that than maybe some of our coach 2s or coach 1s that might be teaching packing. So
okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
I guess the question on that, just specifically, Dustin, is there a difference between the teaching portion versus just the signing off on the last, like the actual test and the entanglement things, like the actual first ones?
Yeah, I mean, practically, it's not going to be an issue to supervise a 10 pack jobs, like as an FAA rigger. The packing endorsement is really what ultimately matters, and to be fair, like even if you're an FAA rigger, you haven't been taught what we technically haven't told you what we require of that final test, so it's hard to place that responsibility on someone who doesn't even know what the pass criteria is, right? That said, like we'll talk about it in a practical sense at the drop zone. Like for me, supervise all the times you want. I don't care. Better than a lot of the coach 1s, I'm sure. The kind of other side of it is that the endorsement needs to be signed off really by someone with the appropriate rating, and that's right or wrong, it's in the PIM, and that's the rule that we have to follow. There's no difference necessarily in the way that it's taught. In fact, I think there's a lot that we could be doing better in the main packing endorsement. And that's something I know I've discussed with Jerod a little bit about making a more formal program. But at the end of the day, follow the manufacturers or the manual of what they require to be done. And I mean, that's different between me or an FAA rigger or any other rigger for that matter.
Yeah.
MV, you had a second question specific with rigging?
Yeah, I just had a rigging
Before we
question
go
because I
off too
have
far on that, I just want to quickly jump in. I did a quick search, quick look. Basically, it references in regards to student parachutes, which one could kind of carry over into other parachutes as well. But FAA riggers are recognized as failing a CSPA endorsed person. An FAA rigger kind of meets the criteria. It is in our PIM 1 that it does reference FAA riggers as failing CSPA rated individuals. So I'll note that, and maybe we'll look at addressing that more directly. Like Dustin said, we're going to look at overhauling the main packing endorsement. So we'll address that when we do that. So thanks, though. That don't need to be brought up.
Good question.
Yeah. My second question was just about rigging. I don't know if I haven't kept up with it since I got the information about it, but someone reached out to me over the winter because they were thinking about doing their rigging course, and they were just kind of asking me like, well, how do I do that? What are the steps and this and that, And I just kind of told them like, oh, like I didn't do my rigging endorsement through the CSPA, like I'm through the FAA, so it's quite different and this and that. So I took it upon myself to kind of get the information like from the CSPA website to deliver the information to this individual. And I just found it a bit odd. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's changed or not, or if there's discussion about changing it. But when I looked over it during the winter, it said that you had to do like reserve practice packs before even going to a rigging course, which I thought was really weird. So I don't know if like that's still a thing or if anyone's talking about changing that, because once I found out that information, I was like, I don't know who has just a reserve like lying around, or someone that wants to take the time to teach someone, which they're pretty much whatever they're going to be taught is going to be taught in the course anyways. So anyways, that was just my question, if that's still a thing or is that going to be changed in the future, or yeah.
So that's right up my alley.
Yeah, that's all you
Yeah. I know in older documentation, it was a prerequisite to have 10 reserves packed prior to course, and then 10 would be packed on course. And then the 10 pre-course packs was removed.
Okay, it was removed. Okay.
We started finding that what was happening is people were going and getting taught by somebody, and they just kind of pair up with a person, and that person necessarily wasn't teaching best practices. They were teaching post certification, how things get done in the real world, one could say. How to cut corners, how to do this, that, or the other thing. So at that point, they removed the pre-course pre-course requirement of 10 packs, because we were starting to get, like I said, bad habits on course that were already, first taught for first remembered kind of thing, right? So yeah, we'll look at that again, and we'll have another look through our system and see if it still exists anywhere. But yeah, that's where that went, and that's why that got dealt with in that manner, just because bad habits were coming into courses prior to even learning officially. So
Yeah, like officially. Okay. I also wanted to ask as well, I noticed like, just again, because I went through like FAA and stuff, I just noticed there's so many different like categories or different steps if someone does want to become a rigger like through the CSPA? Is that still going to be implemented in all those different categories, or are we going to like shrink that down a little bit, or it's going to stay as is right now?
It's gonna stay as is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And V, just so like you're an FAA senior rigger just like me.
Yeah.
I also, that was my first step in the door also, and I went and did my training and I worked with Jerod to convert over to CSPA, and I did find it valuable, but you're not going to have to do, in theory, the full course to if you wanted to get a CSPA rating, but for me it was worth it, and I found a lot more valuable information through CSPA, through the CSPA program, than is required through the FAA, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I was just reading like what the different kind of like, I did this a while ago, like reading the different categories and kind of what you do, like comparing to what you do with FAA, I guess. And yeah, there's like, I feel like there's a couple things where it kind of not overlaps, but it like repeats itself, I guess, in a way. And yeah, I was just wondering if that's still like, is that still needed or is that necessary? Like, obviously, because like I haven't done it through like CSPA, like maybe that is really beneficial, maybe it's not, like I don't know, like it was just yeah, kind of I was just wondering kind of thing, like it was just yeah.
Yeah, as an FAA senior rigger, I flipped over to a rigger A1, so you skip the A level.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay.
Awesome questions, V.
Thanks.
Great. And I do, this is the one thing about this meeting in particular, always goes longer than planned. This meeting used to be 3 hours long because everyone would just chat and all this kind of stuff. And I love it because it does engage a lot of questions. I do recognize it's 6:45, but is there, like, don't be shy. Is there questions? These are some of the things that make this call so different and impactful. So everyone's good? All right. Well, first off, Jerod, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening. I know you're on the West Coast, and you're the West Coast, East Coast. I know you wish to be on the West. No, just kidding. East Coast. For all of those of you who attended today, thank you so much. Yeah, there was great questions in the chat, and hopefully you took stuff away. I do know that Jerod through CSPA, his door is open to questions, so don't ever be shy. I think all of us, one of the biggest things we want to do is keep those doors of communication open. So if you have questions about packing, rigging, and you're just maybe not able to find them from your local area, send a message to Jerod, and he can get on that as well for you guys as well. Just so that I don't forget, I'm going to share my last screen here. So this one has wrapped up the Riggers and Individual Packers Seminar next Tuesday. I am so excited to have Derek Smith presenting on the foundations of Group FS. He is actually going to be talking about some of the other disciplines as well. I've gone through his presentation with him briefly. It looks so good. So definitely join us next week on Tuesday. I think we have it still at 5 o'clock. And it's our final safety seminar series for 2026. So mark that on your calendars for sure. Other than that, again, on behalf of Gord and I, thank you to all of you. Jerod, I appreciate all the feedback from everyone. Gord's cooking me dinner now. So I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll go from there. I appreciate you all.